Hello, horror addicts. I'm Kristin Battestella, aka Kbatz, and if you follow our Facebook community group for horroraddicts.net, you'll know that we've talked about some crafts and some costuming. And Mimi is our fashionista expert. She is awesome. Does all the Lolita designs for us. Predominantly, I do want to talk about some of the craft construction that I have been up to. I've given a few sneak peeks on that group. But as you can see, it is December. It's late and rainy and dreary outside. I probably should be wrapping Christmas presents or baking. I had to make sure all the Christmas presents were out of the way so they wouldn't show up on a video. I feel like I might ramble a little bit, so this could be kind of crazy, but we're going to roll with it. And all this really started from a lot of our Halloween discourse. We talk about what you can and can't get in shops anymore, and how really, I personally also think it really comes down to knowing how to alter or make a lot of your own material is what makes things a little bit more spooky. As I was doing this project, turning this plain bonnet into something a little fancy and Victorian spooky like this, after a while, I got a little bit fed up and I made some mistakes and I had to put things down and let it go for a little bit. And then I ended up making a matching cape because the fabric was there to do so. So I did it, even though I didn't really plan time-wise for that and in the crazy busy hysteria of December. So for a little while, I had to, get this project out of sight and out of mind. I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to finish a video to talk about it, just because I was kind of sick and tired of this project. But I actually recently also participated in a Christmas Carol reading, and that was where I wore a standard top hat, which I did sort of festively jazz up, just subtly, which even the top hat, I looked very cute. I know I looked very cute because I was told 4 times that I looked cute, and twice I was told that I looked adorable, but 3 times I was also told that I looked like Mary Poppins, which maybe wasn't really the look that I was going for. The irony of that was I really wasn't wearing anything else costumey. I was wearing a nice blazer and just a nice long dress. They actually just happened to be modern clothes that looked old and fit the bill. But I was the greeter, doffing my cap and happy Christmasing uncle and God bless merry gentlemen and God bless us everyone to everybody as they came through the door. But when it came time for the reading, I felt kind of silly actually wearing the hat. But when I showed this, which I did bring just in case, I wasn't sure if there were other folks that might want to dress up and be silly when they were doing the fuzzy wig kind of segment. I, of course, big shocker, read Stay 4, The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Basically the part where Scrooge gets scared straight. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, but basically I had the scary part. We should not be surprised by this, should we, horror addicts? No. And when I pulled this out after it had been kind of in the bag with all the other clothes and some of the big books and everything, everybody said, "Oh my God, why didn't you wear that to read?" And I thought, no, no, that's too silly. Now, comparatively to the top hat, which you can see, I guess, is a normal standard size, which probably this can be found really anytime around Halloween or probably at any of the party supply stores year round, and maybe particularly now, maybe as everybody's preparing for things like New Year's Eve, there's probably top hats and little bowlers that you can get, that are cheap or for the moment that you could dress up. This is decidedly huge in comparison. I did not know it was going to be that huge. When I started with this, I posted on our Facebook group before Halloween, I believe, that I saw this at Goodwill. I saw the tag on it, Goodwill for $2.99. And it might be, I think, for The Handmaid's Tale. I've not watched the whole show. We're getting into a bit of frightening flicks. It's a great book by Margaret Atwood. And there's actually an older 80s movie that's actually a very well done adaptation that I really enjoy. I think that's what this is supposed to be, meant to be worn in a little more forward way. But of course, I looked at it as, okay, it could still be some kind of I don't know, milkmaid pilgrim kind of look, maybe. I don't know. That's another thing. Perhaps it probably could have been maybe a pilgrim look. Um, our illustrious hostess, Marion Rich, and I also talked on our pumpkin podcast special, which we aired in, it was before Thanksgiving. It was mid-November, because the way these seasons kind of mix. You know, we like to have scary things all the time, but everyone kind of really pushes Halloween all month only for October. But then understandably, you know, there's issues in history, and Thanksgiving gets lost in the shuffle, and then Christmas seems to start in August, which kind of misses the point if you're a person who celebrates Christmas for religious reasons, you know. So all the commerciality, so everything kind of gets lost in the shuffle at this time. So somehow in all this craziness, I knew that I wanted to jazz this up. And as you can see, I have two. I went back to the store and bought a second one because I had so many ideas about what to do, and we began talking about it on the group. We have some great other fashionistas and professional costumers and tailors and seamstresses on the group. This one is probably going to get jazzed up in some kind of more purple and orange, probably kind of Halloween kind of design. But as the season was coming up, I knew I wanted something that was maybe, I would say Victorian, but I do have to caveat, sort of hasten to add on to that, this is not probably authentic, namely because I used hot glue. There are some great historical costuming kind of references. There's some awesome YouTubers and some great websites and some fascinating kind of books that do a lot of from the period kind of patterns. I'm not really that kind of person. I just, namely on the math alone, I'm much more about, you know, I don't know, eyeballing it. And I, in my post where I've posted some more pictures in detail about how I came about all these projects, I spent a little moment talking about sewing, because I didn't want to discuss sewing in detail because some people are really, really afraid of sewing. It seems to be, sometimes it seems like it's a lost art, other times it seems like it's coming back. You know, I grew up around a lot of older relatives who did almost all their sewing exclusively. I still have a lot of the notions in my stockpile from my evil grandmother. She sewed a lot, and I'm still going through a lot of her things. I guess that was one good thing about her. And people seem to be intimidated by sewing, I think. And, you know, I've been sewing for quite some time. And this cape that I kind of impromptu got into really, really threw me for the ringer. All these projects actually also came from my craft closet. So I was using what I already had at my disposal. And if you're sewing, or if you're getting into reenacting or cosplay nowadays and looking to portray a persona, the ideology is you do have to portray something within your means. Because I was doing a Victorian kind of project, my writing of the article that is on our heartedX.net blog, I was sort of comparing Queen Victoria and Mrs. Cratchit. You know, and it would be really expensive, you know, really beyond anybody's means today to buy, you know, the authentic kind of luxury kind of fabric, and you have to, you know, weigh, you know, time versus cost. Maybe you have money to spend on fancy materials, but, you know, you don't really have the time hours to sew it. So you have to kind of adjust for yourself, and it's okay to start small when you're sewing, and it's okay to mess up, you know. This cape I messed up on because I didn't quite round the corners. I was more excited that I had enough fabric left over. You may recognize this fabric from some of the other videos. This used to be my backdrop fabric for on-location author interviews that you could actually see at our heartedX.net online writers conference. We did that last year. We're going to do that again this February. More information will be coming about that. But when I moved, I needed lovely red fabric for my home, and so that's where most of this went, and these were the pieces that I had left. But I had messed up in the corners, and I had to cut part of it, which is how I got this goofy muff. More on that later, perhaps. And of course, I had black fabric around. If you don't have black fabric lying around, we can't be friends. You should always have a good stock of black fabric. But it's okay to mess up. And I think I had trouble with this kind of just making a straight little caplet because, when my nieces were younger, little girls, and wanted to play princess, I would actually look in the like curtains and drapery departments, and a lot of times they would have clearance of really nice ornate kind of. I probably should have pulled them out because, being sentimental, I saved some of those little costumes from little 8, 9, and 10-year-old little girls. um, like the kind of really fancy gold and silver and kind of ornate and elaborate kind of designs, and they already, a lot of them tended to already have hems and trims on them, or beads, or they could just be really easily gathered with a little knot and tie around a kid, and off they could play. And for a nice looking fabric that a kid could go, "Ooh, I feel like a princess," where they were only $5 or $7, it was worth it. I wasn't spending 25 or 30, $50 a yard for some really luxurious fabric that a kid was going to run around and jump in the mud and ruin. So you have to consider, as I said, what the purpose of your material is, what kind of look you're trying to recreate, and just be realistic within those means. That's actually quite warm, believe it or not. It's, I did line it, but obviously if I'm wearing the red on the outside, this is a nice little pin tuck kind of taffeta fabric, which I had bought this whole bolt on clearance as well. I probably would not, this is probably not something I would have bought full price if I had just been using it for a backdrop. But for clearance, to look sophisticated in a backdrop, it was nice, and I have used it properly. But this is obviously not something you would probably want to get wet, or if you really were going caroling, maybe out in the cold and snow, the red side would probably not, be good for anything wet. But, believe it or not, it is kind of reversible, I think, perhaps. What was so time consuming about this was using this lace that I already had. But because I had to go so finitely nice by hand and sort of hemming this trim all the way around, it actually does look nice on the reverse side, which I suppose is good. But that wouldn't work today out in the nice dreary rain. This lace I got again on clearance from somewhere, and it has these larger holes in it, which I don't knit or crochet. That's an area out of my realm. But I believe it's meant to be something that's really just supposed to be gathered up in a chunky kind of infinity loop kind of scarf kind of design. But I just wanted it to be just a regular sort of nice little gathered kind of lace to go around all my trim. Because part of me was thinking, well, the nice lace that I have, I'm not going to use on some kind of little play presentation project of this. I'll save that for nice clothes that I will actually wear. And this lace I actually only tend to use at maybe for a hem, when I want something to be a little bit longer, discreet, or if I don't care about I want something black maybe on the end on the hem, but I kind of don't care if it gets a little rough or wet or something. So I had to gather this by hand on just little dollar store ribbon here. And I actually just bought a lot more black ribbon at another going out of business sale from one of our local fabric shops. And again, you have to kind of compare that. I thought it was a steal to pay $2 a roll for things that were like 10 or 12 yards for nice thicker black ribbon. This is just dollar store 6 yards, which is good for, basic kind of materials. And if you need something in a different color or something quick, again, don't be afraid to shop at, your dollar stores or your thrift places or Goodwill, because, sometimes when people pass away, a lot of things get donated, or you can find whole things of, like I said, grandma's kind of notions or bags of yarn or material and scrap things like that. The leaves leaves go on pumpkins, not on hats per se. The feathers here just came from like another craft store sort of $5 assortment bag, and in my big crazy craft closet, which I think in some pictures maybe you've seen all the mess, but it's organized for me. And that's maybe part of it too, having a space perhaps where you're able to sort of keep your items and have them sorted, so you know what you have and you know where it is to find it. because it could be expensive if every time you wanted to do a project, you have to decide you need to go out and buy black lace and buy black ribbon and buy black feathers when maybe you already had it. So you're sort of doubling kind of their cost on yourself. So I sort the leaves by color. And with this, I went with sort of whites and brown. There's a few black. This was a big clearance plume, again, for a few dollars that I got for somewhere. Which, or perhaps when you are sewing, maybe there's one centerpiece of an item that maybe is something that is a little more luxury, that maybe you did spend money on, that is going to be the show point. And this was something that I think was probably more money, that had been marked down to a few dollars, that I bought. And it sat in my room for years because I didn't know really what to do with it. But then it seemed to match perfectly to go outrageous, maybe a little towards gaudy and a little towards tacky, but Victorians, we can admit, maybe were a little over the top. That's okay. But that was my ideology with this kind of bonnet. As you can see, this side is done, but also I have something small on this side. And my theory was that people then displayed their class and their wealth on their clothing, because that was where they put their money. So this was more, I thought, something that would be accumulated over time, that a woman would want to boast by putting every kind of, I don't know, sentimental feather or something, literally feather, in her cap. I went with kind of brown and cream, kind of natural colors, because morbid as I was thinking, Mrs. Cratchit, maybe when she, had to pluck the bird, decided to reuse a few of the feathers. And these were dollar store kind of flowers as well. This was some other little plastic little leaf or stem that I stuck in and did different little flowers on this side, because I thought, again, this would be where there's another little black little stem here. I thought that this was where she would show off. This would be sort of her Sunday best, or kind of holiday kind of bonnet. Even though these were just dollar store flowers, which come off the stems. So, okay, this one doesn't want to come off the stem, or you can cut them off. But so I tend to use just these little flowers for everything, more than I actually use them as artificial sort of flowers. Not sure if you can see down here in the front. Let me move my giant hat out of the way. Okay. Who cares? Now this one here is actually just a nice flower that I just hot glued a barrette back to it for my hair, because I do have long hair that maybe I don't necessarily always style as I should, but sometimes just one little style, if you're pulling your hair back with one little jaunty little flower, kind of goes a long way, perhaps, maybe. Again, as I was thinking, when I did that reading presentation, I was wearing regular clothes, not a costume, but I received all different kind of compliments. And I wasn't wearing something costumey. I was just wearing something current, well, not current, they're probably something that I probably had for 10 or 12 years, but, or something maybe I probably found secondhand or something. But an idea of, I don't necessarily have to, look like I'm wearing a Halloween costume all the time. But if you just do something a little extra in your persona, your person, yourself, that makes you feel good, that you enjoy, then maybe that, makes other people smile too. And it could be something, this might have been a $2 flower on its own, but this was a 50-cent little stick-on leaf, that just, you never know who might notice that you've got a cute little thing in your hair. These other dollar store flowers I actually did in more detail, in kind of pseudo kind of fascinator, perhaps, kind of looks. Here's a few of them, where it's a sort of a base of flowers with like the leaves underneath, and then the accessory kind of feathers and little stems sort of stuck here and there. And the leaf backs are just kind of what make it kind of sturdy for the little clips on the back, if you can see. And the funny thing about these things is that I enjoy making them. I like having the supply handy to be able to make the little accessory, but then a lot of times I kind of do sort of forget to wear them. because I guess maybe people don't really necessarily dress up like this so much anymore. I look like my portrait of the man with the golden helmet here with a little poof on my head. This little bell thing also came about. I started doing the bonnets. I had plans for the bonnets, and then everything just sort of spiraled into 4 different projects when I still had more sewing and baking and Christmas things to do. But again, perhaps because I sewed a lot for children in their youth, my nieces, I tended to always put bells on every single thing that I made for them. If they're watching this, they're probably laughing hysterically, because one time I actually put a giant bell that was actually kind of a little too heavy on my niece's little cape. But, you know, just so I could hear the little kids playing and I could know where they were and what they were doing. And because this was a festive project, I knew I wanted to include bells. And I did a little barrette back on here as well as a pin back. So it feels like it's kind of delicate because I left the bells on a string where they could dangle and jingle loosely, freely. But, you know, if you're going out on Christmas Eve or if you're going kind of caroling and you just want to have a cute little jingle bell pin, again, it was just the leaves with the bells, or you could have it in your hair again. So if you're the short person in the choir, everybody could see your pretty little jingle behind you. So it could be pinned on my jaunty little cape, or it could just be a jaunty accessory for some other time. Who knows? This is supposed to be a muff. Now, this is obviously something that is a muff. But I'm also, from the kind of 70s and 80s era where there were these big, giant, ugly, tacky ones that you hated with your little poncho and your pom-pom bells, and it was all pink and terrible. I have made other muffs for other people that have been out of imitation fur. And the inside of these is lined. You put sort of any kind of cotton, kind of warm. And then if you're doing fur, they actually are very warm. Just if you're, in a car ride or something. I did make an entire ensemble for my sister. She's the kind of person who is always cold. So I made her a leather car cape with a big fur cap and a big fur muff and a big kind of fur kind of lap blanket. So she looks like she could go out in the one horse open sleigh and be completely warm, because that was something that I had planned every piece out, and I had used, fabric and materials of quality that were of weather and temperature. This happened to be just the scrap pieces from the cape where I had messed up, where I thought, I still have fabric, what can I do with it? So this is supposed to be a muff, but again, maybe it's not weather appropriate, but I do think it looks quite cute with the cape. I didn't intend to wear any of this for the video, sorry, but I do think it looks kind of cute with the cape, that it sort of completes the ensemble, as we should say. And this was, again, something spur of the moment that I didn't really have time for, but it does look kind of cute in the end result. If I ever am going caroling and I do need to wear something that looks kind of ye old, I have clothing for it. At the Christmas Carol reading in which I took part, a gentleman did ask me, because I was a little upset because I thought I was wearing something that was more an 1890s sort of silhouette. And I felt that this kind of cape and the way the hat was so giant maybe seemed more 1830s. And I have big ball gowns and hoop skirts that are obviously much more 1850, 1860s, kind of more American Civil War than they are Dickens, Victorian. I was a little disappointed that I didn't have something that was specifically 1843. But nobody else really cared about that. They just thought the aesthetic kind of looked cute. But a gentleman had asked me, why do you have all these things? And I didn't really have a very good answer. I said, I had been at several events and conventions and conferences and things where sometimes dressing up is warranted. but maybe dressing up is always warranted. We don't know. So this has been a long and rambly video, but I hope I have inspired some folks to get crazy in their holiday wear, or to just give some basic projects a whirl. Maybe not all at once, maybe not all at busy December Christmas holiday time. There we go. Yeah. No. Okay. Bye, heart.